What is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in today on the podcast, Kicking It with Kardolus. I am your host, Michelle Kardolus. And if you're catching us on YouTube here, you can see that I have a lovely guest, Nastasja Abel, here with me today. And I'm super pumped to have you on the show because Reiki is something that people are not really familiar with. Everybody's kind of heard about it, talked about it, but they don't really know. And so for you, as somebody who is a certified Reiki Master Practitioner for 6 years, for the last 2 of that being a teacher and certified Animal Reiki Practitioner, which I can't wait to hear about. That alone fascinates me. And registered Reiki Master Teacher with the Canadian Reiki Association. Also certified as an Akashic Record reader since 2004, and I can firsthand testify to your experience of being intuitive, medium, empath, and an energy reader.
Oh my Lanta.
I just like got like the best good vibes ever from reading that. So welcome and thank you for being on the podcast show.
Awesome. Thank you. So honored that you asked me. So
like I said, I'm really excited to have you here. And for those of you that don't know, you've been my Reiki practitioner for years, for probably 5-ish years or so. So to get started, I would love to hear your story of how you got into Reiki, where it all began from you. And I know, just touching base with you before this call, we touched on Akashic Record reader was kind of the method. Yeah.
So I to tapping into information. So
yes, I would love to hear how that started, because the number one question that I hear a lot from people is, what is Reiki? So I'd love to learn.
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot of information out there. And well, I guess we could go back to starting with, as you mentioned, the Akasha record. So even before that, my first encounter with Reiki was with my cat. She was having a feline asthma attack, and it was really bad. And it happened at night. I woke up to her breathing very heavily and very crackly and very labored. And so I was just trying to keep her calm because I was still half asleep, half awake. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden my hands started to heat up. And I thought, okay, it's just her body heat. But they got hot, and my cat passed out. Her breathing returned. Yeah. She fell asleep. And then when I finally realized that was happening, it was probably maybe 5-10 minutes. I can't say for sure. Then I fell asleep. And so, of course, back then, there wasn't really too much access in the internet about it. I mean, I couldn't say my hands get hot with petting cat. Like, I mean, you wouldn't find anything really unless it was something very
Google that one.
Yeah. So so from there, I just kind of left it. And then one day, just for some reason, I started getting very, I guess you could say, spiritual. And from there, I just started thinking, okay, well, what is this all about? And long story short, I saw that there's this Akashic record, and it talks about how to access your own sort of, I guess you could call it, energetic library, where it has information about you and everything. And I thought, well, what the heck? It was like $25. It was dirt cheap, and dragged my friend along with me, and we took it, and it was amazing. Like, it was my first introduction to what energy feels like when you actually still your mind and focus on something. And it was very surreal. And in the classroom, we all had experiences. So, it could have been, suggestive if you wanted to look at it at a speculative perspective. Mm-hmm. But for me, it was real. I felt it. My friend felt it. And for her, she was a medium, scared crapless to be one, had encountered a lot of things in her childhood, and she just turned it right off. And this really showed to her that she wasn't cuckoo. And so we just had a lot of amazing breakthrough experiences. So from there, I dug a little bit deeper, and then I heard about energy healing. And from there, that's when Reiki kind of entered my life. And I decided that I wanted to take Reiki 1, and was able to find two master teachers. They worked together. And from there, it just grew into a passion. And I can tell you that I don't think I've had any one session, whether it was with a friend, family, whether I donated Reiki, or someone came into my Reiki room to get it, that there wasn't something very profound that would happen. And it wasn't something that we planned, or it was just about relaxing, giving the body time to have that hour and really connect with inward, and to see that a lot of these people that were coming in skeptical, can't even see the word, would leave and just feel like a weight had fallen off. So how I met you was through my husband, and how you started is I was doing case studies with Reiki. So, we were recording some of the experiences you were having and with other people as well. And it's definitely something where people either, if they experience it and they come in with an open heart and an open mind about it, they do benefit greatly from it. For others who do come in very not believing or skeptical, or they feel like this is just a ruse or whatever, I will tell you 99% of them are asleep on that table within 5 minutes. So, everyone comes out with something. And it's something I think we all need, but it's something we can all do for ourselves too. So you don't necessarily have to have a practitioner to offer it, but at the same time, if you want to get started, it's probably the best way to go.
Well, it's coming from my own personal experience, and knowing your husband through Taekwondo, who's also a black belt as I am as well.
That's right.
When I was first going through, I don't even remember what it was. It was most likely my Crohn's or physical soreness, because I was having a lot of body tension and aches. And I had seen in your business cards in our club, and he's like, yeah, I remember him telling me that he used to be he was even skeptical.
Oh, he's so redneck.
Oh, yes. But even as myself, as somebody at that time in my life, 5-7 years ago, I hadn't even really entered the fitness space. I hadn't done any personal development. Even myself was still fairly quite skeptical. Still to this day, when I refer you to people, because I refer you to all of my clients and to everybody that I come into contact with, there was things in your intuitiveness that you knew that my husband only knew. And like, there was no way for your husband to know. Like, there was very personal things that had come up from from my first experience. And I was still even then a little like, okay, we'll see. I was just in a mindset of, we'll see what happens. This might be bullshit. It might not be. Whatever happens. So I wasn't necessarily, I didn't have an intention of what it would be. I didn't have an intention of what it wouldn't be. I was just kind of like, whatever happens. Yeah. But like you said, it was profound. You knew that there were certain things that were a pain point for me, or an energetic struggle for me, based on certain things in my past that nobody could know about, possibly ever. So, which just goes to speak volumes of that connection that you can have with people, which can be profound.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think sometimes when that information comes up while we're having the session, and depending where you are, if you're in a state of deep relaxation, I call it sometimes the car sleep, where you're, when you're driving a lot, you're a passenger, you're in the car, and the heat, the moving of the vehicle, it kind of lulls you into this light nap. You're still knowing where you are, you're fully aware, but your eyes are closed, you're in this really relaxed state. And that's usually where Reiki takes most people. Some people go deeper, and some people even get to the point where they're start to snore and whatever, but that's fantastic. If anything, that's sort of a goal, because you're actually allowing your body to absorb the Reiki and do its own innate healing, at the same time releasing stress and all those other things that brought you there. And that's when you can actually start tapping in. And, for me, the first time that actually happened, I just thought I was on glue. I thought, I just made that up. It was in my mind, but it was very persistent. When you're imagining something, sometimes it can be persistent, but this felt different. But, I was really prompted to ask the question. And so, like I said, if you're not in that deep state or that light state, and you still, want that information to come up as it happens, I just say it. I'm not there to stop the information from coming through. There's a reason why I'm given that information. And a lot of times we have access to that to ourselves, but we're just too busy, or we're not sure. We doubt. So for me, I just stopped doubting and just said, you know what, if I'm wrong, doesn't matter. I'm just going to say it. Yeah. And I've had people call me later or email me later, sometimes 2 or 3 weeks later, and then just, oh my God, you know what that meant? You know, I didn't think I didn't think you were saying something correct or whatever. And here I am, you know, blah, blah, blah. So that happens more times than not. And I can tell you a lot of intuitives will get that quite often as well. So it's you know.
You've never been wrong for me. So I can say that.
Been off a couple times, but you know.
There's always a connection. So
yeah, absolutely. That's why I don't stop. I don't stop myself from saying, you know, this, oh my God, this information came in. This sounds really weird. I'm going to say it anyway, because I am going to be at that one point where I don't say it, and I could have, and it could have helped that person. Yeah. And I don't want to be in that situation. I'd rather them say, no, you're wrong. And fine, that's great. Rather than not say anything and just say, you know, I wish I would have known. Yeah, you know, another conversation to have with them later. And that's sort of for me.
So I have two questions for you that you've touched on. Is, I guess my first one, again, for the people that are listening that might not be, you know, quote unquote woke or open or spiritual or maybe in tune with energy and vibration. Yeah. Everybody's heard of Reiki. Everybody knows, you know, they think Reiki and they think woo woo. Yeah. Maybe it's energy, maybe it's healing, maybe it's alignment. What is Reiki? How would you explain it to people that are listening that maybe don't have a clue or maybe have been misinformed?
Okay, well, I think we'll just do it in a 2-sentence. Reiki really is energy that surrounds us, encompasses us. It's everywhere. It's like air. We're made up of it. There's an intelligence to it. The universe is made up of it, whether you want to go that far out. Energy holds information. We all know that energy always has to flow, whether you look at it in an electrical perspective or you look at it in an information perspective. If you look at our cellular towers and our technology that nowadays, that's all energy, whether it's done through a wave, you know, through other means, it always carries information. It always does. So right now, while you're thinking, you're creating energy and creating information. Your body is full of energy. It has to be. We take energy, we transmute it, we convert it. Then that's through consumption. That can be through some sort of chemical process. And what I say Reiki is, at the end of the day, is Reiki always has to flow. And if it's not flowing, it causes an imbalance. And when you have an imbalance, that's when you have things like, you know, it could be disease, it could be not feeling well. It can show up physically, mentally, emotionally. What I will say, that when you go back to learning Reiki with the, oh my God, I can't remember his name, Dr. Emoto. He's the actual Japanese originator from Reiki, but it actually goes further back than him. He brought it more into the forefront of making people responsible for themselves. And what your line of thinking and how you behave and how you do things in your life affect you as well. They also create and deplete energy.
Absolutely.
And right. So what I will say to the people who think this is woo-woo is, if you go into a scientific basis around Reiki, it's really about creating space so that the body can go into a state that you can actually allow your body to allow those energetic flows to either be repaired, remove blockages, release, what have you. That for me is more profound than anything that I have ever learned. As far as what Reiki is. People will always say it's energy healing. You heal with your hands. I feel you heal more with your hands. Your hands are just more of that physical conduit, because we are people who heal with touch. When you get a hug, when someone touches your arm, that comforting, there is also a chemical and a physical reaction with that as well. So it's a holistic approach when you're doing Reiki in the physical with your hands. But I can do Reiki long distance too, and just through thought. I can do, and through intention. And I know that's where it gets really woo-woo for some people, but it's sometimes more profound when I do a long distance session than when I have someone in on the table with me.
Oh my God, there's so
that was one of 2 sentences.
So I want to go back to something you said that's really important. There's lots of things you said in that whole. I
know, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. This is perfect. It's the power of thoughts.
Yes.
And so, you know, it is the thought and the intention. And I always teach, and I talk about this heavily in my coaching that I do with my clients one-on-one, and even in my group programs, is the power of the thought and the power of the intention. and we're always creating whether we think we are or not.
Absolutely.
So we don't necessarily have to be woke for it's still going to happen. The universe is still listening. And it's interesting where you brought up the scientific studies, because it has been scientifically proven many times. And I know Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this all the time, of the brain scans and the heart scans that they do when talking about energy transference. And there's been countless studies of brain waves and it creating different wavelengths as you are thinking things. Thus, the whole, teachings of law of attraction, power manifestation, and visualization. And so the power of thought is huge, and having your intention. And again, I always tell people, where your intention goes, your attention goes, and your energy flows.
That's right.
Right. And so two things, another thing that you had said earlier, you had mentioned as well, is your intuition and not listening to your energy and being out of balance. In a world right now where we're all extremely busy, everybody is stressed, it's always go, go, go. And the original foundings of Reiki was founded to teach people to be in check with themselves.
That's right.
How imperative do you think Reiki is now in our day-to-day world?
I'm going to say more so, because we're moving into a different approach on how Western medicine is amazing when it comes to emergency or things where they're dire and quick action is needed. Don't get me wrong, Western medicine has come so far. But when you have people that were Western medicine, and I'm going to call it that because we're more focused on the symptoms rather than the root cause right now.
Yep.
We want more people are asking, okay, but why am I having this? You're giving me medicine and it's working. I feel great. Thank you. But why do I have to keep taking this medicine? Mm-hmm. What is the underlying condition that's causing for me to have these symptoms and to have me not feel well or what have you? And it's not always one thing. And Reiki, I always say, is not the answer for everything. I don't care what any teacher or practitioner says that Reiki will help you with this, will help you with that. It's not a cure-all. It is part of a holistic approach. You still need your doctor. You still need someone to talk to. Reiki, just for me, when you bring Reiki into the equation, it's like taking everything you're doing and then you're bundling it up to say, you know what, I really care about myself. I need to take time out. That's what Reiki does at the end of the day. It's a timeout is really what it is. And when you have more timeouts, and it doesn't have to be a Reiki session, but when you have more timeouts and connect within, you are going to heal much faster than if you were just taking a drug, a prescription, or going to see a therapist or whatever. You need those, but you need to connect within you. You're the people outside you can't always be the healer. You have to be the healer. You have to be part of that equation. And Reiki helps you with that. When people wake up from a session or they're done with a session, they don't have time. We don't sit there and chit chat through the whole conversation and they're talking about all their problems.
No,
they're introspecting. It just, all of a sudden Reiki just somehow takes over and people just start to connect within. I mean, people cry, some people get angry. I've had couple clients who get angry, but they needed to express that. And that's part of the Reiki that also I find very amazing, is that it gets right into, I don't want to say the psyche, but into those areas in the mindset that you are repeating over and over again. And I'm not saying it's bad, but you're stuck. So if you want to move forward with something and you have that same mindset, I call it the broken record. It just plays the same thing over and over.
Broken loop.
You can't go forward. No. Yep. And sometimes your body's trying to tell you that and your body can only talk to you through pain and sensation. And if you're getting sensations and you're not listening, guess what the next step is? Pain. So again, for me, Reiki is part of a holistic approach. It is more so important now than ever because I focus Reiki right now on stress, because stress hits us on so many levels. I have had clients who say I'm not stressed, but when you're done that session, they feel so good. And what we have picked up, they were in a very minute but underlying but constant chronic stress. That's nickel and dime things.
That's become normal.
Yeah,
that's the thing, is that we have created a stress response and living in a stress response of being busy and always having to go, because I tend to find, because this happens a lot in my coaching, the same thing is that people are like, well, I'm not stressed. I'm not, I'm just busy and I just have to do this and I have to go do that. But I don't actually feel stressed. Well, they've associated that stress is their fight or flight responsive, that it must be, I must have this tragic event or this, this big shift that obviously clearly tells me that now I should be stressed, not knowing that their daily life is a physical stress response. They've just unconsciously, it's just, this is how they're working and this is how they're normal now. Because there's definitely been times where I've been like, no, I've had a pretty chill day, and like I come and see you and I'm like, oh man, I needed that. So it's, I ask you this, so do you say then, I guess, in the most common sense, that Reiki is really getting back to that mind-body connection?
It is. And right now, when I still do my research on Reiki in the sort of the Western medicine perspective, there's clinics, hospices, senior homes that are having their nurses and the caregivers learn Reiki 1, because when they've learned that when they're applying it specifically to people who are terminally ill or in seniors or whatever, there's this, all of a sudden, this leveling down of their energy, and they start to feel a little bit better. I'm not saying it's profound, but a little bit over time, and they're noticing huge differences, like in critical sort of the critical hospital, what do they call it? Intensive care. The nurses give Reiki before and after the surgery, and they're finding that, most 99% of the cases, these patients are leaving the hospital sooner.
Well, if you can induce some type of way to calm their parasympathetic nervous system, to relax and not be stressed out.
100%.
Who's not going to be stressed going into surgery? Like, let's be real. Any type of methodology or practice that can get you to, chill the fuck out and just really just, honor thyself and your body and your mind and be grateful. What a better chemical state for your body to go into surgery. Like, why not?
Exactly. And there's another aspect to that too. If you want to look at somewhat at a spiritual level or an energetic level, your body has an innate healing intelligence, and that, we know that already. We have the immune system. We have, like you said, the parasympathetic system. We have the nervous system. You have all these systems that work together. And when one part of that system is not working well, the rest jump in to help out. Okay. But then your optimal level becomes a little bit lower, right? So at a spiritual level, what Reiki does is it helps move into the emotional aspect of your body. There is an emotional body in your system, and it's all tied to parts of your system, parts of your chakra systems, if you're into the awareness of that. But when you dip into that, your emotional system, I find today, is more triggered than ever before. We had stress back in the days when you weren't sure where food was and stuff, but now we are maxed out big time. And it's either self-induced, it's external, well, I should say it this way, it's internal, external, but I also feel that it's compounded now. So we are, to your point, flight or flight. We are constantly in that cycle. And I find it amazing when I have some of my spiritual clients come by and they say, I wake up at, between the 2 and 4 o'clock, and I hear that's the time when, your maybe spirit wants to come talk to you, or they come up with some of these things. And I look at them and I say, well, no, first of all, your adrenals feel like they're shot. I'm sure you have cortisol just swimming around in your body. And by the time your body figures that out, you're going to wake up because you've got excess in your system. You're not getting into that deep sleep because you're not allowing your body to release what it needs to release in order to go back to normal. When we're running away from danger, we recuperate very quickly, but we're always running away from danger now.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you pointed that out, because which is one of the reasons why I've always loved you as a practitioner, and I've always respected your work and what you do with clients, and why I've always recommended you to other people. And this brings me, to a really important conversation as well, is because you're very factual based. You're very like, okay, like, look, this is not, a spirit guide coming in to say hi. Like, you're stressed out and your cortisol levels are now dumping and waking you up. Like, you understand the mechanics of the body and but also the spiritual connection of the mind and body connection. But it's not all that. And so you like I said, you have that real honesty and that integrity in the way that you practice and that you work. Whereas in how we were talking about earlier, before we started recording, is nowadays it seems like anybody can just become a Reiki practitioner.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, back in the day, there was a lady, her name is Takata. She learned right from Dr. Yusui, directly from him. He refused her for quite some time. She was from Hawaii. Now, she is Japanese, I believe, but she lived in Hawaii. She was terminally ill. He was her last resort. She was healed by him. She decided that she would want to become a practitioner. She stayed for numbers of years, learned it, and then took it back to the Western. Now, at first, I'm like, oh, she's just a digger for money, right? Because she was charging $10,000 to learn Reiki 1, and you had to be with her for years. And, you know, each level was, again, maybe 10,000 or more, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But she was smart. She singled out the people who truly believed in it. And the thing that there's a conflict with the history of Dr. Yusui about him being that he came to US and he learned, he was at the university and he was this, he was that. But really at the end of the day, it was about westernizing his story so that people in the Western world would accept Reiki. She was so smart that way. When I finally read all the different types of literature about her, about Dr. Yusui, and then about people who actually went to Japan to learn more about Dr. Yusui, and I kind of connect all the dots, I realized that was one smart cookie. You know, there is a reason why she charged so much. And the reason why but it's funny because when you learn about Dr. Yusui, he didn't teach one way. Yeah. He just went with the flow. Yeah. So what one student got as training, another one got something else. He just went with the flow. But what his basis of his teaching is that you had to be open and receptive to the energy and know that your energy, because once you accept that, then you know you're linked in with that energy that you're feeling through the Reiki practitioner. You are responsible for that energy. And at the same time, you are responsible for your health altogether. You can't expect to be healthy if you're treating people like shit. Right? Like, seriously. That. So that's, for me, what I've learned. And I mean, I'm on a bunch of different Facebook chat groups about Reiki, and everyone has all these different perspectives. But when I look at all the underlying, it's still the same message, right? They care, they want to help. So I never challenge anyone's beliefs about Reiki. I never challenge about anyone's experiences because it's all different. Energy is predominantly a perspective experienced, I guess you could say, situation. We all see color differently. We all know that that's the color red, but how do you know that shade of red you're seeing is the same shade someone else is seeing? You're never going to know. We can come up with 1,000 different words to explain it. We're just never going to know. So for me, I'm very respectful of people when they talk about Reiki and where it comes from. I never correct anyone because I don't think it's fair. I will, however, correct people when they tell me that it's bullshit, it doesn't work, and it's suggestive, and all that kind of stuff. And I say, you know what? Your entire life is based on being suggestive and perspective. Yeah,
that's everything. Everything we do in this world is.
So if you don't agree with it, I love it. Don't agree with it. Fantastic. You know where you are set. That's important. But don't belittle or demean someone else, you know, based on what their experience is or what they believe in, because I just, at the end of the day, we don't have a right to do that. So.
Right. Now, I guess, you know, and so as somebody who's interested in learning about Reiki, because this happens in the coaching space, and I know this from being a coach, is, you know, being labeled, right, as one experience or one standard or one practitioner sets the standard and sets the bar. So, you know, in terms of myself now having been on both sides of the spectrums in terms of having my own business mentors and coaching mentors or Reiki practitioners, and then now being a coach, I always suggest people do your research, ask questions, know what to look for. You know, like I do not coach and teach like a lot of the other people do. I don't just give people a food plan and an exercise plan and say, here you go, best of luck. You know, it's very hands-on, it's very in-depth. So as a Reiki master, so I guess two questions, you know, what does it take and what is involved in becoming a Reiki master? And as somebody who's interested in Reiki, wanting to find a practitioner, what should they ask for in terms of, you know, are they the real deal or is it worth their time and investment? Because there is a significant difference from going and getting Reiki from somebody who's maybe got level 1, who's just tried it for a few months, and obviously working with somebody yourself who's a
That's right.
practitioner and very in line with the practice.
Yeah. So if you're interested in doing Reiki just for yourself and family, Reiki 1 is your go-to. I wouldn't go any further. You learn the basics of Reiki. There's a thing what we call attunements. And for some people, that's kind of like, whoa, what's that? It basically is just a portion of the training where your body and your energetic body is sort of, I guess you could say, cleaned up to accept the Reiki. We all have Reiki, don't get me wrong, but when you're learning to give Reiki, you have to be an open conduit. I never say channel because some people get all freaked out about, I say conduit. It's the same as the difference of using a copper wire for a speaker versus an aluminum wire, right? The copper wire allows free flow of energy. It's clean, it's open, where aluminum is very choppy. There's a lot of electromagnetic smog that comes, or dirty electricity as they call it, right? So there's a preference to why we do that. When you get in attunement, it's the same thing. It's just clearing out your energetic body so that when you're receiving Reiki and you're giving Reiki and you're offering it, you're just a clear channel. That's it. So you get the fundamental attunements for that, and then you're taught how the hands work and the placements, and they're all just sort of what we call guidelines. But you then get the practice in at the same time. When you're taking Reiki 2, 3 is either 3 or master, depending on what lineage of Reiki you're taking, and then you have the teacher. And most of the time now, because of the time and cost effectiveness, teachers are putting 1 and 2 together, and then they're putting 3 and teacher together. Now, if you don't want a teacher, then I'm sure they can accommodate. But Reiki 1 is just your basic, get started, get things going, and that's where you do most of your practice. You do most of your practicing on feeling Reiki, seeing how it affects people, and just learning and gaining experience. And then Reiki 2 is where you can actually go out and get paid for it. That's now through the Canadian Reiki Association. They have some set guidelines, because when you're registered with them, they go through a process that is acceptable through the Ontario government. So that's where they're mainly from, but it's accepted throughout Canada. So there are specific guidelines. I know that they've changed some up through the times, and there's a lot of Reiki 1 practitioners who are now charging, but from what I've learned, you shouldn't be charging until you get to level 2, because level 2, you're given more information, you're given more tools to really help the client more. So that's important. And then 3 is when you're getting into that master. So you get, again, a couple more tools, you learn a little bit more and more in depth. What I found when I got my Reiki 2 was my intuition, I would say, was quite strong, but I always ignored it. I always doubted it. But with going into Reiki 2, that was it. I mean, there's no way out. It just opens you up. What you do with it, of course, is up to you. For me, I just opened up and I just said, you know what, there's a reason why this is happening. And then when you get into master and master, just, that level of experience and the depth that you can get into when you're doing your Reiki session with a client is just way deeper, way richer.
So as a prospective, I guess, buyer or client looking for a practitioner, then you would want somebody who has at least got Reiki 2?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, if you had a friend or someone in your family who was doing Reiki, and they could see you more often, because then they could get the practice in and you could start opening up to it, I think that's fantastic. If you are looking to you don't know anybody and you're looking for an actual practitioner, 2 and up is my recommendation. Some of the questions you want to ask, and I hate to say this, but time does matter. The more experience or the more clients you have, the more experience you have, and the more you can support that customer with those questions.
Right.
And so when I signed up with the Canadian Reiki Association, I had to do 25 1-hour case studies. And I'm telling you, you learn a lot, and it takes a while, right? I mean, it took me about a year to get all my case studies completed. And I think that if anyone wants to do it that way and you want to look for a practitioner, I would highly recommend going to the Canadian Reiki Association. They have a list of all of their registered practitioners and teachers in all the different locations across Canada. And I think you'd be more comfortable with those practitioners because they have signed the code of ethics. they've signed all the guidelines and requirements that the CRA, Canadian Reiki Association, Canadian Reiki Association has you sign and follow. And it also follows the outlines and guidelines of all different levels.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
You said something really important in that too, is when you went into Reiki 2, you had recognized that you would have your own intuition and you had been ignoring it. How many people do you think are, and I always say, like, your gut instinct is always right. Like, your intuition, your gut, your first instinct, your first reaction is almost always true. So how many people do you think are ignoring that, and they're just so out of tune of that mind-body connection? And how valuable is that?
This is going to piss people off, but people who are not feeling they have their full potential, or they're not fulfilling things in their life. Seriously, I'm sorry to say it, but when you feel like you're stuck or you're finding that just nothing's working out for you, and you're trying all these different things, you are still not listening to your intuition. You're doubting that little tiny voice that's saying, but. Once you start listening to that, I am telling you, doors open. And they come up from places you would never think they would open to, right? So it's the biggest mountain and the biggest hurdle, I think, in today's society. A lot of people are waking up to it, and I'm going to use that waking up term, but it's true. A lot of people are realizing, there's CEOs today that are taking intuition courses. And I'm telling you, everyone says, well, it was just hard work and persistence. No, that persistence came from somewhere. Something is pushing you.
Absolutely.
And something telling you to go somewhere when you're in that focused frame of mind. If you are listening to your gut, you're going to be even more focused.
How similar is Reiki to meditation, and what's the comparison or connection?
Well, I'm going to say that it's with Reiki, there's more of a physical aspect that you're allowing your body to have space to relax and release. Meditation does that too. But meditation is more about stilling the mind. You can still the mind when you're in a Reiki session, but sometimes there's a lot of emotions and things that come up, and it's really difficult.
Yep.
But you can also get that in meditation too. I would probably say that with a Reiki session, you're having someone assist you getting into that state where your body can then take over and do the healing. When you're doing meditation, you are fully responsible of getting yourself into that state, but it's more of a state of awareness rather than about healing. Even though state of awareness is healing too, right? I mean, healing is such a big term used nowadays, right? So,
well, I wanted to clarify, because I know that there's, again, society, and I have seen the world is starting to wake up to the importance of the alignment. And I talk about this all the time in my programs: this shift and align. We need to start with the thought, and then the thought leads to, to the belief, to the habits, to the actions, thus creating your results. And meditation. Well, I've added it into my practice for the last 6 to 7 months, and it's been absolutely transformative into what I've done. Reiki has been a completely different thing for me in my life, and I can always, same thing. It's that release and that calm and that still. And I have a very hard time still to this day with meditation by itself, stilling the mind. But Reiki does that for me to the point where I feel that physical calmness. And so it's interesting because CEOs meditate. You talk to any billionaire and high successful operating person, entrepreneurs, they're meditating. They have some type of spiritualness. They're not necessarily talking about it.
That's right.
They've got Reiki. They've got these people in their back pocket, and it makes a huge shift, literally, in their energy and what they're able to accomplish.
Yeah.
And so that brings me to my next question for you, is that Reiki applies to everybody and to anybody. And like you said at the very beginning of this conversation, can be done anywhere, even remotely.
That's right.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, right, because energy, if you think in quantum physics, there's no such thing as time, space, or distance, right? It's all at the same time. I mean, there's studies where they've taken a cell, they've chopped the cell in half, they take one cell and put it 200 kilometers this way, they take the other cell, whatever kilometers that way, and when they poke the one cell, the other one instantly gets the same reaction as the one that got poked, right?
I have read this study, yes.
So if you want to get into science, there is a basis around quantum physics, but it's when you look at how energy how energy works, it's not about time, space, or distance, really. It's really about the movement of thought and intelligence. And what how do I want to say this? How am I going to say this?
You can just say it. You're gifted.
I know.
You just let it rip.
Myself now.
Let it rip.
We're in. Okay, so what was the question again?
Reiki it applies to everybody. It can be done remotely. Yes.
I know, as soon as I get into quantum theory, I'm just like, I love it.
I love it.
Yeah. So Reiki in itself is when you make that connection to the person, and that can be through their name, that can be through their address. But as long as you have, and I always say this, and this isn't about ghosts or anything like that, and like vampires where you need permission, but you do need permission, because there is a law of free will. There is a law of that people allow in their energetic field, in their life, in whether it's through thought, through physical, whatever. You have to respect that boundary. So once you have that permission, and once you have their name, then I can then just get my Reiki going, and I will sit in a room and I will pretend that I have a basketball almost, and I feel the resistance of the energy. And once I start saying, okay, energy flow to so-and-so, I'm actually feeling this ball get smaller and smaller and smaller. And it takes anywhere from 15 to 20, 30 minutes, depending on, how much they need. I mean, there are a lot of people who are depleted. Look at healthcare workers, people who are always giving to other people. They're always using their energy to give to everyone else, but they're never replacing it. So those are the ones I find that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like 20 minutes in. But for some reason, I have the energy and stamina to hold my hands up and continue on sending the Reiki. And that for me is even profound, because I mean, try holding out your hands, holding a pretend ball in front of you, and sit there for 15, 20 minutes. You get tired. You want to put your hands down. You want to start, so I always find that interesting, that I have the energy and the mental energy to keep doing that. But when it's done, I always give about 5 minutes, and then I either text or call back my client. And most of the time they're like, hello. Right? They feel it. They feel certain parts of their body. They get the leg twitch.
Yeah.
Things are sometimes out of the ordinary for them. Other times it's kind of ordinary, but they still feel like something's different. And again, it could be suggestive, but the point is they're feeling something. And usually 2 or 3 days later, I always ask them to get back to me to, offer some more experience if they had any or anything like that. I always love the feedback. They'll always say that, there's been a profound difference in one form or another. And I say profound, and I mean it, because some people feel like they've been emotional for a long time, and then they realize the last 2 days they felt fine. Not great, fantastic. They felt fine. That's a big difference from being emotional for 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
Right?
So for people that are listening and or watching, how do they know that they need Reiki? What would be something that they could feel or they're struggling with? Because as we talked about before, not everything is fixable and solved by Reiki. Who would you say that Reiki is for?
I would say people who feel stressed and are stressed, even if they feel low amount of stress, chances are they might be more that they're just not acknowledging. People who don't feel like themselves, emotional, they feel a little bit more emotional, and that could be either more anger, more sadness, or not feeling emotional at all. Like things that normally would bother them are not. So people who don't feel balanced. Now that could be anything from a physical sensation to maybe something they just feel off. I mean, I remember after having my son, I felt like I was walking beside myself. I just was in a state of fog all the time, I have a lot of women who just have, I shouldn't say a lot, but a few women who've come in who've just had a baby and who feel that way too. And a lot of times I pick up things within their own physical body that they need to address to help them, kind of get back. So it's not necessarily Reiki, but sometimes it's the body needs to give off information. And I'm there to help interpret that, because when you're in that state, who's to say that you can understand what your body's trying to tell you?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I didn't at the time. And I can't imagine when you're stressed that you would too. So sometimes, yes, you need someone to help, kind of interpret that information and bring that forward to you. Reiki's big for that. I have people who have pain that the doctors can't figure it out. There's no sort of pain management treatment that's helping. It may maybe buffer some of it. have had some great successes with the Reiki. And sometimes they don't, but we realize through some of the information the body's giving that what's causing it.
Mm-hmm.
And once they address it, they see a significant, degradation of their pain. Still probably taking some of their pain management, whatever that is, but it's not as debilitating or causing them not to be able to sleep. Because that's another cycle too, right? When you're in pain all the time, you're not sleeping. Well, guess what happens? Then your body goes into more of a chronic state. Then you have more pain.
Yeah.
So somewhere you got to break that broken record.
And especially for anybody who's into the health and fitness space and wanting to work on their fat loss goals or body composition goals.
Right? And you're in pain.
You sleep and you're not sleeping. You got to sleep. Sleep is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
absolutely.
So again, there's different levels. There's different variables always at play there.
Yeah. How often do you? How would you recommend somebody doing Reiki, going to see a Reiki practitioner, not necessarily doing their own, through meditation or through maybe a level 1, but in terms of they're really struggling, even just with life and, they are feeling stuck, they have big goals and visions and they just can't seem to get there. Nothing, is really going their way and they keep self-sabotaging and they, how often, it's not like a massage. Is it like a massage? I guess that's the question. Is it like a massage therapist? Do you go every month? Do you go every 2 weeks? Do you go as something comes up? How does that work?
Well, for me, I know a lot of practitioners will hate me saying this, but I don't tell people to come every once a week. Mm-hmm. I tell people, okay, you've had your first Reiki session, and depending on what that session was like, I will sometimes recommend, I'd really like to see you in a week or 2, because there are some layers that we need to get through, and with the state that you're in right now, you probably can't do it on your own. Otherwise, I really push people to dig within and say, do I really need to go for a Reiki session? And really start learning to listen to the guidance that they get.
Yeah.
I have a school teacher who works in a school that's for kids that have those type of syndromes, whatever it's
like
Asperger's
ADHD and Asperger's and Tourette's and
so you can imagine the stress levels they have, but they do it because they love those kids. So it's kind of, there's that little bit of a buffer there. And I have one teacher, there's 3 of them actually that come see me now, but the one just would not connect internally, didn't believe it, just felt like everything was external and that she had to address it and solution it, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. I had her come see me every 10 days for 3 sessions. And then after that, she started understanding how to connect within. And now I see her maybe once or twice a year.
Nice.
And she's just totally can manage her stress now. She's totally taken that responsibility on her own and noticing what she takes in and and where her thoughts go. That's the most important thing. A lot of people don't realize that where your thoughts go, and you can catch yourself sooner or later. You're going to catch yourself where these thoughts are going. You're like, holy shit, I keep saying that over and over and I didn't realize it. Right?
Absolutely. That's literally probably the first 2 to 3 weeks of my program that I have run with my clients is just activating your awareness.
Yep.
Because you can't change what you don't know. And if you don't know, and if you're not listening and you're not aware, and that's shitty relationships and toxic people and your negative habits and how your body feels, your lack of sleep. Are you eating like an asshole? Like awareness.
Or are you pissed off while you're eating, or you've made your food and you're cranky and all this anger is going into your food and now you're consuming it,
Right? Are you stressed? Are you taking a break? Are you not falling asleep? Right? It's those questions, and asking the why and being aware. Awareness absolutely is key.
It is. And, and I will say on a physical level with doing Reiki, that when I have new clients that come on my table, the first thing I always watch for is how are they breathing? Because that gives me that sort of level of how stressed they are. Because I'll tell you right now, and I actually did some data analysis. I am a senior business analyst, so I do a lot of data. So I'm very logical at the same time into the energy realm and quantum theory and all that stuff. And they're all shallow breathers.
Yeah.
All of them that come in that have some level of stress. Even though I had some of them say I'm not as stressed, I watch them breathe, and it's all in the chest. I walk them through grounding, and through that grounding meditation, it's about a minute and a half for some maybe a little bit longer, depending if I can feel their energy level is way up here instead of more relaxed. And I'll ask them to take that deep breath and keep going. And some can't do it.
Yeah.
Their muscles are so tight where their diaphragm is that they can't take that deep breath.
We've
But
lost control. We've lost our
we're not supposed to be
connection with the
breathing from there.
breath.
We're supposed to be breathing down from the chest.
Yeah.
And there's another reason why that is too. And this is something that your audience can look up, and it's called the vagus nerve.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
You
Yes.
have three brains, and they're all connected by this vagus nerve. And those three brains are the brain, your heart, and your gut. And that vagus nerve is the traffic, is the, what you would call it, like the telephone line between all three. And your breathing activates that nerve. So if you're shallow breathing, you're not getting good communication between the gut, the heart, and the brain.
And it's all about alignment.
It is. It is. You know?
Absolutely.
So if there's one thing that people want to take away and they want to learn, they want to get into maybe more of that relaxed state. It doesn't have to be meditation, but it can be a form of Reiki in a sense. Start taking slow, relaxed, deep breaths. Sit down for 5 minutes. If you're feeling stressed, get up, find somewhere quiet, sit down, or however you're comfortable, and take some just really deep breaths in and relax, breathe out. Just allow your body, and I always say, when you get to the point where you're breathing deeply, you're going to feel some tension, and you're going to pretend it's like an elastic band between your brain, heart, and your gut. And you're going to feel this elastic kind of pulling. It's almost like when you take a deep yawn, like you're pulling an elastic. Once you feel that pressure and that release, you've activated that vagus nerve. Yeah. There's just no way about it. And I'll tell you, when you come back, you feel like that fire that used to be raging will not be as big as it was before you left.
I love that.
All three brains are engaged. They're now fully aware and attentive to what's going on, and they're more logical than if you only had one or the other working on its own.
Well, you answered my next question. What can people do to get immediate results?
That's it right there. I'll tell you right now. That's it. And that I did not learn from anywhere but doing Reiki.
Yeah. So I love that.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Fascinating. Fascinating stuff. I absolutely, this has been really, really informative and helpful. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk about this today. It's energy work is becoming more and more dominant and more discussed into our society, which is amazing. But I do believe that not all practitioners are the same. There is the experience and the education for really, I believe, a true mind-body connection from the practitioner itself, and also with the client. That comes from experience, and that comes from doing the work. And very much like you said, trusting your intuition. So I love that. I hope that, people enjoyed this as well, and we're able to get a better understanding of what it is and what it isn't, also of what it's not. And so, I really appreciate and respect your analytical and scientific side to it, because it would be very easy for a practitioner to be like, oh yeah, I can fix that. Like you said, right? Come see me every week. I can fix that. I can fix this. Because while it is extremely helpful, and I believe that people are starting to do the shift to a more holistic approach, which I love, and I'm 100%, I'm pro that. It doesn't fix everything, so you do need to be careful with what things you are trying to use Reiki for. So. That being said, there is a lot of benefits to a ton of people that are out there. And, especially with the way that things have been going in our worlds today, these last, 3-4 weeks, people's stress levels are through the roof right now.
Well, you feel like you're being forced in the home where you used to have the freedom to leave. But even though it's one of those self-isolation rules per se, I mean, we still can go out and get stuff, but it's really, the stress is really causing some people to react and behave differently, right? Again, it's that perceived in so many different ways, but
and I firmly believe that everything that we do, I'd say transaction is probably the wrong term, but everything for me is an energy exchange. Conversations I have with the people, is that a good energy exchange? The coaching that I'm doing, is that a good energy exchange? What I'm buying, what I'm eating, is that a good energy exchange? And right now, I love that we're being forced to be at home and really pay attention to our energy, because we're not having one with ourselves.
it's the storyline that we're seeing now. Okay, you're made to be home. Be home. And you know, for some people it's hard because they worry about finance. Like some people actually have lost their jobs.
Yeah.
But if they're getting that financial means, and if they're not, you know, I always say if you change the narrative, if you change your perspective, you change the narrative. And I mean, I am seeing people who are getting financially crunched with this, but I also, you have to look at it as an opportunity, because the minute you see it that it's not, you're blocking the energy because you're focused on the not rather than what the possibilities are. Once you're open to possibilities, then guess what? Things start to happen.
Absolutely.
So again, that's also energy too. And you know, Reiki for me has opened up more than just it being an energy healing modality, as they call it. It's for me, it's opened up so much more because I kept my mind open.
Well, and I am the same way. I firmly believe that not only does it help me, you know, calm and de-stress, because I'm typically, you know, similar to a lot of people where I'm always giving, taking care of, and I got nothing left for me, or I'm holding on to everybody else's energy because I listen to people all the time through coaching. But, you know, it's being aware of your own energy. So it's, you know, it's the mental aspect, it's the physical aspect, it's, you know, the emotional aspect. And there's no time than now, I think, again, with us being forced to really check in with ourselves and how is your energy with yourself, that there's no better time than now that people around the world could benefit from some of this type of practice.
You touched on something that I have been teaching people, but I haven't been very good at. So I'm still learning to be a teacher. So I'm always a student, right? Is your energy should never be depleted, because your energy is your own. The minute you start taking on someone's, or you're giving because you want to help them be balanced, you can't do that when you're not balanced. And balance for me is keeping your own energy and taking any energy from the universe to help that person instead, and teach them how to take back their energy so that they're not depleted even though they're giving. You can still give energy, but give it from the universe, not from yourself.
Right. And I say this all the time, you can't give from an empty cup.
You can't. Exactly. Right? And you can't also fill your cup when it's full.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll never learn if you think that you've learned everything you need to learn, because that's not true. And going back to my statement, always the student before being the teacher. And that rule is so true. A teacher is never really a true teacher. They're always a student.
Absolutely.
Always. You're always a student. Doesn't matter what level you are, you're always learning. And that's the biggest thing I've learned, is when I'm helping people or I'm giving myself to people, I keep my own energy. And if I feel that they need energy, I just ask the universe to give them that energy, and if they're open for it, right? And that's what Reiki is really at the end of the day. It's just using universal energy and giving it to people who just don't know how to do that yet, you know? And I think that would probably be the third sort of good constructive thing about what Reiki healing is, right? It's you're just channeling universal energy that everyone has access to at the end of the day, but they just forgot how to do that.
Yeah. And so for those of you who are listening today and are interested in getting some access to that, or experiencing that, or potentially tapping into that, as our lovely guest, who is the owner of Back to You Healing. Did I say that right?
Back to You Healing.
Back to you. I'm like, I don't know. She's just my girl who takes care of me and like fixes me. And she's graciously donated some of her time for listeners here today. So we are going to do a giveaway, which I'm super excited and pumped about. And I can like wholeheartedly tell you, you're going to love every second of this. So again, you don't have to have any expectations, just wing it and let what be may be. And
That's
so
right.
I will post the details here onto the podcast, on my Instagram, onto my YouTube, onto all the social media platforms. But what I would love to have is you guys go into our Instagram and comment below onto this podcast episode as to why you think that you would need a Reiki session, or, you know, what are you struggling with the most that you feel that you could get the most energy balanced up, or maybe you're your first time Reiki learner and you want to have your first experience. There's no better person that I could recommend having your first experience with than with our lovely guest here today. And so there's 2 giveaways. One of them is going to be a 60-minute full Reiki session that you're going to be able to do in person if you're local. For those of us who are still under coronavirus lockdown and quarantine, when those legislations and laws have been lifted, you can qualify to win that gift. And for everybody else, there's also a 30-minute intuitive session that you'll be able to do online. You can do that via Zoom or Skype, however, Facebook Messenger, however you guys want to connect. So the giveaway is open to anybody across worldwide. So highly recommend that you guys, comment, get it onto the contest. Absolutely amazing experience. So again, I just, thank you again so much for coming on to the show today and just really explaining, the differences in getting into it without it, again, without it being one way or the other of too spiritual woo-woo of this, but really providing some scientific base to that as well. So I really appreciate that. And I would love just to have you finish off as to what is one thing that people should do every day to help them with their mind and body alignment.
Well, probably everyone's going to say meditating, but I'm not going to say that. I'm going to go back to learn about the vagus nerve and learn about breathing. Learn learn that you are not breathing properly, or that if you are, maybe you need to go deeper, and really start focusing on the breath. And when I say that, I don't mean that at a meditative state. I mean that at an internal connecting state. Your body's not your enemy by any means. So breathing is the one thing that you have to have in order to live. You can live without food for a while. You can live with water for a while, but 5 minutes not breathing, that's it. You're done. So that would be my number one. There is so much amazing things that happen when you start doing the breath and you start connecting in. And I can't say that enough. There's no Reiki. There's nothing else. I mean, you can meditate for hours. If you don't really champion that for yourself, the breath and connecting within and honoring your body and your mind, even though your mind might be going a mile a minute, when you start recognizing certain patterns and you start connecting, the change becomes really profound as well. I just like Reiki could be a stepping stone, but that would be my number one tip. Just take 5 minutes every day. Start with a minute, work your way up, or take the time when you're feeling stressed, take that 5 minutes and do the breath. And, but yeah, look up the vagus nerve, and yeah, I'm telling you, you'll learn a lot, and you'll realize that when you think that it's a physical reaction first before something else happens, it's not. It's always starts somewhere within a thought or something within at a sort of mental state before it becomes a physical manifestation. That in itself is 100%. I mean, it goes without saying.
Yeah. And again, you said something really important too. Start with a minute a day, right?
Yes. Oh my God.
The whole, vision, of my company and of what I teach really is to show and to help guide people and show them that change is possible. So, you want to get a better mind-body connection, and you want to practice on the breath, and you want to get into a meditative state, or you want to work on your Reiki, 1 minute a day, 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, then 5 minutes. You don't have to jump in and be an hour session master every single day, right? Change is possible by these little tiny steps. And I truly believe, from my own experience and from working with others and from myself working with you, is that even a couple of sessions of Reiki practice and getting more alignment with your mind and body connection is definitely one of the stepping stones to creating change, a positive change in your life.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yep.
All right.
Agree with you 100%.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.